If anybody that owns a gym that's watching this now wants a piece of advice that this reminisces with a little bit, sit down with your people, set a hard schedule on going out and talking to people in the community, because that's how you're gonna save your business. You cannot rely on Facebook and getting digital leads anymore.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Our guest today is a serial fitness entrepreneur and 4 times Inc. 5000 winner. Having launched one of the first boutique strength training brands on the outskirts of Los Angeles in 2007, our guest has spearheaded a successful gym business that today operates more than 20 franchise locations across the United States that uses his own unique and patented multi-purpose strength equipment. He also founded Hardcore Nutrition and created i.l.i.f.t technology, and his latest consumer product company is called Bulletproof Fitness Equipment.
Every client gets a customized dietitian designed diet when they come in. If you want to lose fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. And if you want to change the structure of your body, you have to be doing sound resistance training. Those are the 2 key things. Not every person can be a top level competitor. When you push your body and your psychology to such an extreme, and you're not prepared for it, it can do more harm than good. If I give you the best diet in the world and you just put it on your fridge, it ain't gonna make you lose weight. So it's about execution. That's gonna be the difference that's gonna change the industry, is getting back to humanity. Go out and talk to people in person, shake their actual hand, ask them their problems in person, and you're gonna start getting a lot more leads.
The founder and CEO of Hardcore Fitness, Mr. Larry Nolan. Mr. Larry Nolan, thank you for inviting me into your wonderful brand new house.
Yes. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. We're just talking about China and Chinese trade shows. So you're impressed by the what was it called? What was the one you went to?
The China Sports Show.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the size of it is just ridiculous. So you're used to a regular a convention center, and literally you walk out into this courtyard and imagine the convention centers we're used to, but they're sitting one next to the other, making like this big horseshoe that's, each one of them is the size of what we're used to. And they have anything from small gadgets to electronic stuff, but anything that has to do with anything sporting related. So it can be actual sports, so football, anything like that, all the way to weight training. And it was definitely impressive.
Which city was that one in? Was it Shanghai, was it?
Now I don't even remember. They blend together. So we went to several cities while we were there, but it was, the show itself was big, and it really just gives you a different perspective on the scale, for sure. The amount of manufacturers and the amount of stuff that they're producing is just on a much different level than you would see, I think, anywhere else.
Yeah, I went there before the pandemic, right before, and similar to you, I've been to, for the whole of my business career, I've always gone to trade shows, it's several times a year, but seeing some of these Chinese sporting goods shows were just another level. And it's not like you've got lots of little companies, but you've also got a lot of huge, very well established, very professional, manufacturing very well, but you just can't believe there's just so many of those companies there.
Yeah, and I think that there is a shift going right now, as a lot of them said that they're pretty slow. So I don't know if it's a combination of oversaturation, or if it's a slowing in the market, but I was surprised because each time I've been there, they're as busy as can be. And so there's definitely somewhat of a shift that seems to be going on. So time will kind of tell what that is. I haven't gotten a clear answer from anybody, but the manufacturers we use, the manufacturers we've talked to, they're definitely slower. And the benefit to our side is they seem a little bit more eager to probably do some of the things that you want them to do, where when they're super busy, they're just kind of like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. So I think that gives us a benefit now, but hopefully they don't get too slow, because that runs into problems.
Yeah, I think some of them, you do get a lot of trading companies sort of fronting as factories and all buying from the same 90% place.
90% of them. Yeah, and you don't know until you're all of a sudden like, oh, I've just been this here whole time, and you actually don't own anything. Yeah.
I've been to some, I've been in the early days, I'd go to China and I'd meet one company and they would take you to the factory, and then I'd go and leave them at the hotel and come back in the next company, and they'd take you to exactly the same factory.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of those where it took us a little while, because you think if you're touring the factory, then that's obviously their factory. And you don't think, who's going to let them just tour this factory and pretend? Oh no, they definitely do. So yeah, it took us a while to kind of figure out how you do your due diligence to make sure that like, okay, is this actually this person's factory? And so now is like we're there making sure they're shooting video of the production of making the samples and all the other stuff and kind of going through making sure that, there's certain websites you can check to see what the level of exports they have and things like that and what the names are associated. So my sister's my partner, she's really good with that stuff. So a lot more of that than we did in the beginning, which was just like, looks good. All right, let's make some equipment. So definitely shifted our direction.
Well, it was 2019 when we last spoke, prior to the craziness in the world.
Yeah.
Your business at the time was predominantly running gyms and franchising gyms. Tell us about that story. What was it? What was it like for you? And clearly you got through it, but how did you get through it?
Yeah. I think one is we were like one of the first gyms to close, so we were really proactive. We felt like it was a sensitive situation, and if one, we were quick to close, and two, we were immediate to shut off people's payments. They don't have to call in, they don't have to email in. All the lines are busy, nobody's getting back to their emails. I saw that happen a lot, and that was what I was scared of and didn't want to happen. So I think that we kind of gained some trust and respect from our current clients at the time. They were like, these people took care of this quickly. We didn't have to go through a runaround for them to get 1 or 2 months extra billing like a lot of gyms. I think they did it out of desperation knowing they needed that money, but I think that it definitely put a bad taste in people's mouths. So we were lucky to kind of make that decision off the bat. And then here at my home, I had turned my gym into a live studio. So we put a satellite on it, had our tech guy come out and basically did like a pretty good production level workout setup to where we were doing live workouts all the time, and we started charging for that. So a lot of our members and other people started chiming in on that. And so what I did is I distributed that income to the franchisees. So we would have some of them come out, they would join in, so they would drive out and they would be guest trainers, so they actually participated in it, so their members would see it. But it ended up making a decent enough money for them to basically kind of keep afloat.
I know a lot of people have tried that, and it was a cost. So what do you think allowed you to actually make money from that? And what did you do differently to a lot of others?
Yeah, I think that the part of it was just really being close enough with the community and really drawing on that, basically kind of emphasizing to them that it was more than a workout. So we kind of kicked it off where we did like this mimosa type of thing where we had all the owners from the franchises come out to our corporate location. And it was like, we're all just gonna, everyone's stressed out, let's spend an hour and you guys Q&A and we're gonna go over some fun topics and we're just gonna all drink mimosas. And so it started like that, and everybody, all of the members from all the gyms, we had thousands of people that were tuning into this, and everybody was feeling the vibes. And we were basically, the idea was kind of talking about, while this is fun, like this is what we need to keep as this community, but we also, aside from fun, we need to be exercising. We need to continue to be working out. So here's what we want to do. And so it was really keeping the community together with fun little stuff like that, but constantly communicating the importance of continuing to exercise. So by the time we were kind of pitching it to them, the price was at a low price point. It made sense to them. And we had it to where, there was a comment section, so we always made it fun. So during the workouts, they were always commenting. So we knew that it couldn't just be pre-recorded workouts. It couldn't be live workouts. The platform we used had to where they could real easily comment from their laptop, from their phone, from their tablet. And so we encouraged a lot of that. And honestly, most of them liked that probably more than the exercise. And a lot of them said that is, I didn't even do the workout today. I just watched. I loved the comments and I loved how funny it was. And the trainers, like my wife is funny, they would joke with each other, and people would like we would have guests come over that were clients that weren't in great shape yet. So they'd get killed, they'd be falling. So we made it to where there was an entertainment and a social factor to it. And I think that's really what kind of differentiated it. It was much more than the workout. A lot of people said I tuned into it because it was fun. Even if I was lazy and I felt like a bum, I felt so stupid watching this and not exercising, but I liked it, and it was entertaining to see you guys and what you guys were all saying and doing. It made me feel like I was still part of the community. And I think that's kind of what people needed. So the tying all those things together, I think, is really what kind of made it work.
How did you engage your franchisees then? Were they part of the workout? How many franchisees did you have at the time?
Like 23.
Right.
And they were, I've spoken to you before. Franchising is difficult. You have a lot of personalities, you have a lot of different people, and not everybody's on the same page. And so that's one of the hardest things with it. But for whatever reason, at that time, everybody really took my lead, and everybody was there for support. I remember I was in Las Vegas when they had introduced that there was going to be a lockdown. So I jump in the car, we're driving back, and I get everybody on a phone call. And while I'm in the car, I'm like, here's what we're going to do. We're all closing our gyms. We're shutting off all the payments. And I'm immediately going to start these live workouts. Here's what we're going to do. And no pushback, not one person. And I think that was really fortunate, because that's just not normally how things work. You have a lot of different opinions and other things, and everyone was like, cool, let's do it. And when I wanted to do these live workouts, they were eager to come out. People drove from different distances, people came from all over, and they all wanted to be a part of it. They all equally participated. If all of that hadn't happened, it wouldn't have worked. But I think when I was communicating it to them, they really saw the big picture. When I was like, this is important. Your members have to see you on here. If we all want to make money, because it's not just going to be your members, but it's going to be my members are going to love to see a fresh face. So like, we really need participation from everybody for this to work. And they all saw the vision. And so everybody really stepped in. And it was very fortunate, because like you said, you're charging a small amount of money. I want to say it was like between $12.99 and $19.99 or whatever. We might have charged more like in the very beginning, but it wasn't a lot of money. So there had to be a high volume of those people. So we weren't making money, but it was enough money to like pay the rent for the building or whatever. So it wasn't that it was necessarily making the franchisees money to like go home and pay bills, but it made it to where when they were opening, they weren't in this huge area of debt and had massive amounts that they had to catch up on. So it was a blessing in that regard for sure.
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalog is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today, or be one of the lucky few to receive a hardbound printed copy straight to your door. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now. For those of you who don't know your model then, how would you explain your gym model to people, I guess, who who've not been in one?
Yeah, so I would say almost all group training is based on kind of a HIIT style, more of a cardio emphasis. I would say a lot of that is based around people generally consider that to be a better workout. It's an easier sell. If I have somebody do some controlled bicep curls for 1 minute or have them do a sprint for 1 minute and you ask them what was a better workout, they're probably going to say the sprint. So we're essentially in most cases selling what people genuinely want. And it's also much easier because there isn't really equipment equipped to train people in a group setting to do true split body part, bodybuilding style or traditional style training. So I think that's why you see 99.9% of these studios train that way. Mine is, I was just very adamant that that's not how I train. We had very large groups of fitness competitors for years. Our largest show, we had 37 competitors in a single show. So we did very high scale coaching. And I don't train people that way. So for me, integrity-wise, like I want to train people the way that I believe in. And so years back, we created our own line of equipment that were multi-use pieces of equipment. The foundation was resistance training. So in a group setting, we have body parts that we work on. It's split body part training. You're going to come in and you're going to be at this station. And if it's chest and back, you're going to be doing bench press and pull-ups or assisted pull-ups if you can't do them. And each station is going to be focused on that. And it's a sound resistance training workout that I would go through or put somebody else through. Then we do have an accessory program that is boxing and cardio and stuff like that. It's called our Fight Camp. So clients that have gotten their foundational resistance training can do that as an accessory class to burn extra calories and work on conditioning and things like that. So I would say that's the big thing that sets us apart. And then every client that joins, we have our own app that has all dietitian designed diets. So it's all based on their calories and their goals. So every client gets a customized dietitian designed diet when they come in as well. So foundation of resistance training and nutrition, and then we have the accessory of the cardio.
What would you say would be a target demographic for that type of business?
I mean, honestly, nobody really, which is the hard part, because people don't really want that. So that's always been the hard part, is if you ask them, if you put them in another class that's cardio based, they want that more. They like that better. The thing for me is this works better. And so the one thing that worked for us is it was a slow burn because people didn't want it. But what started happening was all these people were getting way better results. And so our first big kick was probably in like 2009. We were on the news, we'd done all this stuff. We did our first like 60-day challenge. And we had just like crazy, crazy results, much more than you'd see in the traditional programs that people were doing. And so when we were interviewed, that's what we were talking about, is it's sound resistance training and diet. Like we do supplement cardio for people that want to expedite the results, but if they're in a deep enough calorie deficit, we don't even need them to do cardio. And so it was a slow burn of just people seeing that it worked better, but it's always a hard sell. You know, go to a woman and go, we're going to lift heavy weights. They never want to hear that. So it's always been an uphill battle, but I think that the reason that it's prevailed is just simply because it is the best solution. It is what you talk to any high-level trainer, and if they're talking about actual body composition change, they are going to agree. It's, if you want to lose fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit, and if you want to change the structure of your body, you have to be doing sound resistance training. Those are the two key things. So just because it's the best, it is the true solution that's needed, eventually it ends up prevailing. It just took a long time and knocking on a lot of doors. So
it is interesting because now you're starting to see a lot of these strength-based studios. I know just this week alone, Orange Theory announced their strength program where they're, I don't know too much about the details, but they're kind of offsetting the more cardio-based and putting in some light dumbbells. And I've also seen a number around LA, a lot of these sort of bodybuilding style circuits, training and training type of thing. So it seems as though, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, but it seems as though this kind of style of training, which some people will call bodybuilding, but it's a great way to change your body shape and get in condition. It seems that it's kind of almost like coming right back round now, where people, some of the research out there is saying we need to be doing strength training, and people are now starting to go and search that out, and more models are being created. How do you see that? Because you've been doing it for a long time.
Well, I think that the one benefit is on the health side, we've gotten a big kick. Is you have a lot of people now, like recent studies that have come out, several, they've always been attributed to movement, cardio-based stuff. And a lot of this stuff now is attributed to people just having a lack of muscle. So they're saying, look, the problem isn't that you're not just moving enough. Like even when you're moving, you have no lean body mass. And when you add lean body mass, all of a sudden all these problems go away. And it's anything from, bone density to actual acute issues that people are having. So a lot of that stuff has helped. Also is social media, while it has its own downfalls, is it has shown you follow the people that are in the best shape. That's how they all train. So it's become a little easier for us now. That's one of the things we actually train our salespeople to talk about, is to say, look, this is the best solution. Just ask them, who do you follow on social media? And they go this person, say, do you ever see them use a Smith machine, a cable machine? Do you ever see them do a leg extension? And they're like, yeah, like, why would you want to go somewhere that doesn't do that, right? Obviously that's what they do. That's what works. So we kind of like are constantly trying to find a way to make it just an easier mental acquisition for somebody to understand that this is what they need, because it's not necessarily what they want. But we're having a lot of outside stimulus that is aiding in that now, from the medical community, just the social factors. You see women all the time watching these women they want to look like with doing heavy squats, doing these other things. They're kind of like, okay, maybe this isn't that bad. So over the last few years, it's definitely made that easier for us.
What would be the age range of people that you're getting?
It used to be like, when I started in 2007, it was all middle-aged women at a park, so we didn't even have a gym at the time. It was all outdoor training, and they were middle-aged, they were moms essentially. I think that there's a few reasons for that. One is us guys don't want to ask for help. We definitely don't want to be in a group of other guys suffering, running around and stuff, and looking like we aren't competent and capable. So I think ego and pride kind of gets in the way of that stuff. But as time has gone by, we've seen a much bigger diversification of the people that we have, where it used to be like 95% middle-aged females. Now I would say, like, the last times that we had looked, it was still predominantly that, but it was down to like 60%. And so we've really gotten a wider spread of younger people, a lot more men. You walk into our gyms now and they definitely look like a much more even mix. And it took a very long time. I think also older men look at that as like aerobics or something. So their wife goes to a class and they're like, you should come to my class, babe. And he's like, yeah, no, I'll go to the gym and work out myself. So it's taken a long time, and the guy will finally come in and go, whoa, like, these are the lifts I normally do, but I rest for 7 minutes, and you guys had me resting for 1 or 2 minutes. Like, I'm dying in here. So as people do it, then the word spreads. But Yeah, I mean, like they'll say that all the time, is the people that are blazing that new path, it's usually paved in blood and dead bodies. It's like people get killed trying to blaze that path. And we've definitely felt that. There's been times where it's definitely been a strain trying to do something that's so against the grain, but it has come back around and been worth it. And now it's a lot easier.
You mentioned social media influencing the body shape, and this is something I've spoken about a few times on the podcast. And I would say, for most people's standards, you've got 300,000+ followers on your Instagram. So I would say that you're yourself an influencer as well as owning a gym brand, and you must I guess you've got a good understanding of how that whole world works and what how to engage with people. What do you think has been the change that has really brought women into looking at this different type of body shape that probably, certainly maybe 8 to 10 years ago, it was very different. They weren't looking at muscle, they weren't looking at the big shape, bums or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So certainly something's changed the way that women look and want to sort of present themselves, which I guess is sort of playing into what you're delivering. So what observations have you seen from that perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think that it is. We used to look at celebrities. That's what influenced, I think, a lot of style, a lot of looks, those things. We had our favorite celebrities, and that is what beauty or the pinnacle of something looked like. Now the crazy thing is you have 6 million celebrities, because they don't just look at the people on TV, they're looking at people on TikTok, and they're looking at the people that are on Instagram. And these people have millions and millions of followers and they are dictating what the beauty standard looks like. And the other thing is when I was in high school, I had to be as cool as the coolest guy at my school, or I would dress like the cool guy at my school. That's a very small circle. The circle's gotten so big now that you have people that you're following in Brazil, different cultures, and those areas may reward a different beauty standard. So we have some of our engineers that are in Brazil, and when you go there, when we were going there, is you saw larger quads, hamstrings, and glutes have been much more of a beauty standard and popular in that country far before here. I'm friends with Tamer, who helps run the NPC, and they basically started their category for wellness in Brazil because that's where it was popular and they had a large body of people to pull from. So it's interesting seeing how social media connects everybody, but also is pulling from this large pool, and it's really kind of taking the largest group of these people that makes a generalization of a beauty standard. So if you've got a ton of these women that are in Brazil that have influenced a lot of other women that are in Colombia and the US, and now all of those people start to adhere to that, that becomes this new standard. So it is interesting because it wasn't that way. That was several years ago, that wasn't the thing, but now it is. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see. These people have enough eyes on them and enough influence that they're not only influencing the people under them, but they're influencing the other influencers. If those people see this girl is getting all of this attention because she has these big, strong legs, on my social media, I need to be competing with that, so I'm going to try to go in that direction too. So you're kind of looking at it from two different directions. How do I grow my personal brand? And then the other people that are looking up saying, I want to be that next person. So you kind of have this circle of everybody that's going to be repeating what this person's doing if they're getting positive feedback for it.
The glutes and legs is an interesting thing, because also it was almost like having a small bum. The bigger the bum, the problem. Women would always hide their bum. I remember when I was sort of like, in my 20s, that was like, you just, the big bum weren't the thing that you wanted.
Right.
And now it's like, the bigger the bum, the better.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always say is the best thing to look at is extremes are always something that might get you in trouble, because things go full circle, things go in and out. And if you genuinely like it, great. But if you're doing it to keep up with a certain standard, I promise you that standard isn't going to be there forever. And so, like you said, is the smaller glutes and the smaller legs were a thing. I would not be surprised at all if it starts to go back in that direction. So anytime I ever have anybody that's like, oh, I want to grow this because this person looks good, I'm always like, if you genuinely believe that and that's going to make you happy, cool. But if you think it's just going to be for your social media or for outside gratification, you might be disappointed later because now you're stuck with something that's no longer the beauty standard. So I think that's something for people to consider.
How do you and your wife navigate that type of guidance as coaches and I guess influencers in some way? Because I think we chatted about it last time, but you can get people come in, it's like, look, I really, almost like obsessive about getting something where they're going to put themselves into more danger to kind of get a look because it's fashionable than what necessarily fits their body shape and body style.
Yeah.
We all know there's a big psychological part to why people join gyms. How are you getting that balance where people are actually feeling good and confident about what they have and are going to the gym to make the most of that and in a positive way, as opposed to doing it where it's going to create other mental issues that you kind of don't really want them to do?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely hits on why we're not competition coaches anymore. I don't knock on competing because I took a ton from competing. I think some of my best lessons were from competing. Being able to diet through my birthday was something that taught me strength. That if you had told me I'll give you $1 million to diet through your birthday, I'd be like, keep your $1 million. I couldn't do it. And when I did it, I was like, dang, like I'm counting myself out. I'm stronger than I thought I could be. So I took so much great stuff from competing. The problem is you really do have to have an athlete mindset to take from competing, because otherwise it can become very detrimental. Is not every person can be an Olympian. Not every person can be a top level competitor. When you push your body and your psychology to such an extreme and you're not prepared for it, it can do more harm than good. And that's really why we stopped doing it. Not because we don't believe in competing, but I don't believe that the majority of people are prepared to be able to push their body to that place and be in a healthy place afterwards. And so that can go with really anything. Outside of competing, the same type of goals, like you said, somebody comes and goes, I want these legs in this time and I want this. It starts to push into that same direction. Is the psychology of it and the potential rebound that people are going to have and those kind of things. We're just very strict on educating people on those things now, and just not strictly as a coach, not taking people that do that. If they're like, this is what I want to pay you for, and you know after talking to them, psychologically they're not in a place to where, say they want to lose a ton of weight, they want to, get in this amazing shape in a short period of time, and they're not going to follow a reverse diet or do the proper things they need to do. You just have to be able to say no, because you're going to do more harm than good. Where that wasn't the case before. We would take people on and hope that we could make them stronger mentally and do these things. And I think that that's, can do more harm than good. Believing in somebody is a good thing, but if somebody's showing you that they're not capable and that they're likely going to end up in a bad place, you're better off accepting that, making them kind of do things in a slower way until you're convinced that they're going to be in a better place, and then agree to kind of push them to a different place. And I think the other part is just the psychological part that isn't addressed a lot. When you're talking to a client, you don't just want to take a client because they're offering you money and they gave a goal and it's your job to get to that goal. And that's the hard part that I had to learn as a competition coach, because that kind of is your goal. I want to win a show. Okay, cool. Let's get you to win a show. What do we got to do to get you to win a show? So you really do have to be able to sit down with somebody and understand, like, why are you doing this? What got you in this place in the first place? What? And I always say is, like, when we talk to our coaches, there should be at least 3 different questions that you ask on the same few questions. So like when I ask somebody, what is your ideal physique? You usually have to ask it in 3 different ways before they give you a real answer. My dream physique is losing 15 pounds. Why do you want to lose 15 pounds? Because it'll make me feel better. How does losing 15 pounds make you feel better? Then you might start to get, well, it'll give me more confidence. Okay, cool. Why aren't you confident now? And so one question, if you really care, can lead to a lot more leading questions. And then you can get to know that person. And it might not be that they need to lose 15 pounds. It might be that, they have a bad relationship with their husband or other things, and they think that being super skinny will fix it or whatever. So even though we're not therapists, we want to get to the root of that so that we can understand how we can best help them. And I think that can sometimes be missed. Going through a basic questionnaire and just asking a few questions, we really have to get to the root. The other one that I like to ask is, when somebody said, when were you in the best shape of your life? When somebody says, like, oh, when I was in college or high school, I really like digging through that question, because that one can tell a lot about somebody. When somebody's like, yeah, high school. Why high school? Did you go more places or wear clothes you wouldn't wear now? Did you feel more confident? Did you feel sexier? Like, do you feel, yeah, I felt sexier. Do you still feel that sexy with your spouse now? And those can be hard questions to ask. You have to be confident in your role as a coach to ask that, because those are personal questions, but they're important. If somebody says, no, I don't feel as sexy with my spouse anymore, then you can start leading down that as well. Okay, cool. Like, is that part of the problem? Is that part of what we're trying to fix? So I think that the physical part is only one and the psychological part is another. Their physical capabilities, but also their mental capabilities, and mentally what's really making them tick and why they want to do it.
How do you do that at scale? Because you're not as I understand, you're not just doing one-on-one, you're doing like small groups. So how are you managing to script or schedule that kind of conversation with groups of people?
Yeah, every person that comes into us has to go through that. So if they come in and go, I just want to join, they still have to go through the hour-long assessment. And so that's part of the thing is I try to tell our franchisees, tell our people is, one is you're doing yourself a disservice because as we'd mentioned, our classes are different. We're using different equipment. It's not the normal type of thing. You want to make sure that they're also equipped to be able to have a good experience in the class. But I always tell those people is what's going to determine their success genuinely has nothing to do with our class. They always think our classes are the best. Just let them take the class and go do it. The class doesn't fix any of the things you and I just talked about. It doesn't address those things. It doesn't even let us know those things. We don't know how to motivate them. Do they want to be pushed? During that conversation, they might say, I'm just somebody who needs to really get a push. You know, I won't push myself. Cool, you need to communicate that to the trainers. Hey, you know, Matt just signed up. He's somebody that has these goals and he needs to be pushed hard. And part of our process is they're supposed to walk the person down, introduce them to the trainer. The trainer's supposed to know what's going on. So that's a part of how that's supposed to work. And it is hard because sometimes people are like, this person just wants to jump in a class. They already know their friend comes and they just want to join. I'm like, yeah, but that's not how we're going to help them be successful. So yeah, we make it mandatory that every person has to go through that 1 hour assessment.
And how do you train that? Because what you've just said, you've obviously done this many times, and the way you do it, you're skilled enough to know how to dance with someone and get that out.
Yep.
Giving someone a script and suddenly coming out, do you feel sexy with your partner? Like you're probably going to get a slap around the face kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. You ain't lying. So it's two parts. One is there has to be consistent training. We have regular, when they first get onboarded, is modules, just video training to give them at least a basic idea of how it's supposed to be done. Then we do on-hand training with them. And then the other part that really has made it easier is we basically dumbed down kind of the questionnaire to where the leading questions I have now made to where they're actually written. So what I just said to you as far as like, when were you in the best shape of your life? And you say high school. And then the next one is saying, why did you feel that way? Instead of me just having that question and training the leading questions, I've actually written those out. And so now what I'm essentially training them to do is not just read off of the paper, is saying, look, these are all here. You can take a glance at that, but you should be, after you've done this with enough repetition, you should understand what this is. And it's teaching them this questionnaire is simply an opportunity to create a genuine conversation. If you are here, and I tell them is don't look at it as a sale, is look at this as you're trying to accomplish two things: fix their problem and be their friend. If they leave here and go, they just provided me with a solution to my problem and I really like them and I trust them and I know them and they shared some things with me and I feel like I could open up to them, that's going to be a win. But I think that a lot of the time is if you're reading off this thing, you almost feel like you have to get a certain answer, and it's really, the goal isn't to get a certain answer. The goal is just to open up conversation so they can let you know what they need. And so that's been kind of like, that little twist in mentality has helped a lot of people that I think a lot of people don't have a sales mentality. They don't want to sell somebody, which is natural. So I let them know, if your goal is from the moment you meet them, I tell you by the time you walk away, and I ask them, would you want to be friends with them, or are you friends with them? And they say yes. Did they solve your problem? And they say yes. You know what the last part of that question is going to be? Did you end up signing up? It's going to be yes, because they know they feel like they know you, they like you, they trust you, and you took time to get to know them and solve their problem, and now you're in a much better place for it. But I do think that it requires having enough training, and it has to have a questionnaire that can, at least in the beginning, lead them in the right direction so they can get repetition and kind of find their own groove with that.
What's the repeat requirement to maintain that level across all your franchises? Do you do it to the owners of the franchises and then they train that down, or do you manage that for everybody?
Yeah, so we've worked it both ways. The big issue that you have is if the franchisees aren't doing it and I step in, then it almost causes more problems, because if they're training them a different way or not training them at all, or just throwing people in classes and not doing any sales process, and now I step in, these people are like a deer in the headlights. So it's really one of those things I have to constantly work on consistency in the brand. Everybody has to be doing things the right way, or I can't help at all. I can't step in and talk to all your staff about something that they haven't been doing, because they're just going to feel confused, and then it makes you look bad, and it's just a bad dynamic. So we've worked it both ways, but the ideal situation is I'm supposed to be the one at the top that trains the franchisees, and they are supposed to be working with their staff. It's okay for me to step in and do quarterly trainings and things like that and still be there as assistants, but I shouldn't be the main one doing the training. And so, yeah, it comes down to the franchisee. And that's essentially when you buy a franchise, you're buying a proven successful business model that comes with support, but you're still the business owner that has to execute that plan. So if I give you the best diet in the world and you just put it on your fridge, it ain't gonna make you lose weight. So it's about execution. So that's what I try to tell the franchisees. And if they do that and they do at least once a month training with their sales staff, that's enough. That once a month to keep it fresh, because it is a skill that has to be constantly worked on. You can't just have them watch my modules and expect them to be good salespeople. It just doesn't work that way.
Have you learned a lot about selection when it comes to franchisees then? Because my guess is that part of that is, there's some people that probably have one mindset of, okay, I know I've been doing this for long enough, and then there's others that are good to basically follow instructions.
Yeah.
Do you have you figured out a way to sort of work that out before you take people on?
Yeah, so we have a much higher success rate now with recent franchisees. Like I had mentioned to you, our franchisee in Germany, he was one of our more recent franchisees, and now he owns that territory, and he has a master franchise with franchisees he's signing underneath him. So we've gotten better at that. The hard part, I think, for me personally, is I a lot of the time lead with my heart and what I want for somebody. And when somebody comes to me like, I just love your program, I want this so bad, I want it for them. So that was, something that I had to try to mitigate a little bit, is even though I want that for them, I have to put them through our personality test. I have to go through these other things to see if they're going to be a right fit. And we've gotten better at doing that. But in the beginning, I just wanted people to be successful, and you're a great person, and I feel that I have this knowledge and this game plan, and you'll follow it and everyone will be good. And anybody out there looking to open a franchise, don't go about it that way. Not everybody is cut out for it, for sure. And you and I had talked a little bit too, is the reason the dynamic's hard is, you have somebody come to you and they know nothing about how to run your model, they just love it. So they give you all the respect in the world because I need to learn from you. But 6 months later, they have moderate success, and all their clients are like, you're a genius. I didn't even know this is a franchise. Why do you even need that? You're so good. You're so good. And so they start being like, yeah, why do I need this? A year later, then they're like, man, I've got my own ideas. I want to start implementing my own ideas. And we talk about this in our franchises. It always comes full circle. What I mean by that is they start doing that little by little, and they stop doing the things I said, and they start implementing their own ideas. And eventually they get to this full circle where they come to me and go, everything's broken, we're not making money, I need your help. And so then I'll step in and we just basically rebuild all the stuff that was already supposed to be done. Things are good, relationship's good, but then slowly over time, that process seems to keep happening. And it's just a challenge with the dynamic of a franchise. You are putting your own money into it, you're showing up working on it every day, so it's natural you're gonna feel ownership over it. I should be able to do the things that I want. And I have to say that's not what you signed up for, and you're supposed to follow the business model. So just franchising in general has that challenge in itself. And I think anybody that does franchising is going to face it. And each person has to try their best to keep consistency so that they're in the best place to be able to help their franchisees.
We were talking about other example franchise businesses which are a little bit more automated. I think we were talking about like smoothie companies, where there's a little bit less variation in terms of the personal touch. It's, you pick these cups, you pull this button, and that's it. With your business, it sounds as though you've got a number of different items. You've got this unique equipment solution, which kind of doesn't really exist out there from most companies that are making equipment. And then there seems to be this big element on the sort of the soft education, support, communication side. Like, would you say then, if you had to describe your business, that it's not really just a workout program? It is really the secret sauce in what's made your business very, very successful is a lot of those sort of softer parts that may kind of get tossed because people think it's a circuit of machines doing getting you in shape.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely been a part of the success, but it's also part of the difficulty because, like you said, you're not pulling a lever. So when you go in and there's all these different things that we're doing differently and all these things that work better and all these different details, but being multifaceted does make it more challenging from a franchisee standpoint. You have a sales component, customer service component, you have a training component, and so like I let them know is, as somebody that's a business owner, you need to take pride and integrity in the fact that you know all of these moving parts. You can hire people, but don't expect to be incredibly successful if you're completely naive to all of these things. If you don't know anything about exercise and you've owned this franchise for 3 years, we got to look in the mirror and ask why we haven't started taking a little time to learn that. You know, it's like, I understand you didn't join this franchise network as a seasoned trainer, but you've been here for a few years. Why haven't you taken any time to learn it? It's part of your business. Sales, why don't you know that? Why don't you know customer service? So because there's so many of those aspects, it allows more success, but it does require more input from the franchisee. It is not the easiest franchise to own, for sure. And I tell people that the first phone call. And they always think that it's like a ploy for me to scare them away. And I'm like, I'm not trying to, it's not like my sales thing of scaring you away. It's me being very honest. I want people to know what they're getting into. Yes, I can show you some P&Ls, I can show you stuff. We have locations that do very well. But those people have to learn a lot and they have to work a lot. Like it's not an easy solution. It's not a gas station, you know. So you're not gonna have that same type of dynamic. So I do think that all the things we've built over the years, I'm proud of them. I think it differentiates us from other people. It allows us to kind of stand out in different ways. I think that people that gone to other programs and come to us really appreciate those things, and it really allows us to really get people. Our location that we opened in Long Beach, one of the recent ones that we just opened, I won't mention the name of the gym across the street, but one of the biggest franchises was directly across the street. And before our pre-sale was over, we had taken all their members and closed the gym. So just them coming over and trying some free classes, they just noticed such a drastic difference from what they were getting from there. So I always say that is like, we can open right next to any other group training spot, and that's the best place for us to open because people come over and go, whoa, like you guys offer so much more. But it does put extra stress on the franchisee. It's a harder model to learn all that and manage all that.
So going back to the pandemic then, when you came out of that, seems as though you managed to make a slight pivot, keep the lights on for a lot of your franchisees. How did you come out? Did you lose any stores when?
No, so we lost one store, not because they couldn't stay open, but because the landlord insisted that they signed a new lease during lockdown. And so like we were like, we're not even allowed to go in the building and you want us to sign a brand new lease. Our lease isn't even over. You're trying to renegotiate a new lease. So it was one of those things that was just like a crazy situation. So it wasn't financial or because they had to. It was like the landlord was literally driving them out. But that store closed, but none of the other stores closed during or after. So we've maintained all of them and they've all stayed open. Some of the locations struggled more than others, but like our Agura location, she didn't get a lot of help with her rent. They wanted her to pay all this back rent. Like she was in a spot that was pretty rough, and she's climbed from that spot to being like in the top 3 in the company and does really good. So we've had, I think some of the people, the struggle like really gave them some extra grit and motivation. Like they really seem to have dug in and they're just like, no, like I'm not going out without a fight. And I always say is like, when you're faced with that type of struggle, it's going to do one of two things. You're either going to start to show your teeth or you're going to go into a corner. And, you know, it's kind of done that. And fortunately for us, most of the franchisees have kind of shown some teeth. And right when the pandemic ended, we had kind of that influx of people that couldn't wait to get out of the house. They were so tired of being cooped up. So that gave us a burst of extra business. But that, of course, died down. Like this last year, I think a lot of gyms have probably had one of the hardest years that they've experienced. But during that time, like I let everybody know, we need to be focusing on our marketing. We need to be focusing on these things because this isn't forever. Like I knew these people were cooped up. It's not because these people all are going to be here for 5 years. A lot of these people just want to get out of the house. They aren't going to stick. And so I think because we knew that and we were constantly planning ahead, we weren't. I think some gyms were letting off the gas a little. Like, whoa, oh my gosh, we're killing it. Look at this. We made it through the pandemic. We got a little money in the bank from, you know, a PPP loan, and now all these people are coming. Like it's going to be, grass is going to be really green. And I had a strong feeling that wasn't going to be the case. So I kind of told everybody in our meetings, like, hey, this isn't going to be forever. You have to make sure that your salespeople are good, your trainers are killing it in classes, the member relations are good, all these people are feeling the love, they're being held accountable. Like we have to be building these systems because it's going to get harder. And this last year was that. Like it all came in. We're managing to still do okay this year, but it's been having to by the skin of our teeth.
What do you think that is? Because there's definitely I see a greater interest in health and fitness as a result for different reasons, but there seems to be more of an interest for it. I hear some groups are doing extremely well, but I think as a general, when you cut through it. I don't think people are necessarily back to where they were. And I've been trying to sort of figure out, well, why is that? Is it just that maybe financially people are not investing as much into it? What do you think it's this year in particular? In some cases, it's just been a bit tougher to get people through the doors.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say certainly, but I can say I feel certain that these are two of the major aspects. One is as soon as Facebook and Instagram changed their ability to target people the same way based on interest, everybody felt that. The problem with that wasn't just that. Yes, the main problem is that everybody was relying on that. So you had an entire industry that had the owners, the sales staff, everybody sat around and waited for leads to come in from Facebook because they were just abundant. It was raining leads. All the stuff I was trained on was going out and talking to people in person. You had a community presence. Part of our business model is you're supposed to set up those on-sites on a monthly basis. How many of my franchises do that? None. How many of most franchisees do that? None, because they all sat around and they waited for Facebook. So it was a combination of those two things, plus the third element is even if you send people out, we live in such a digital age that as we are sending people out, they've really lost the skill of communication. And so you put people out with a table and they just stand there. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, I'm doing this. And I'm like, you're supposed to be talking to people. We're talking, right? They're like, I'm waiting for someone to come to the table. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. We're in a social place. Wave to somebody, call them over, go over and talk to them. So we have a combination of those three things that I know for a fact are really detrimental. And if those things don't change, those are going to be, if they already haven't been the downfall and the end of many gyms, they'll be the death of many more. If anybody that owns a gym that's watching this now wants a piece of advice that this reminisces with a little bit, sit down with your people, set a hard schedule on going out and talking to people in the community, because that's how you're gonna save your business. You cannot rely on Facebook and getting digital leads anymore. It just, no matter how many guys are calling you, telling you they got the new way, they don't. It doesn't exist anymore. So if you really want to thrive, you have to have a combination of those digital leads, email marketing, all that stuff, but you have to go to the old school tactics of going out and actually talking to people. Because think about it, you could set a table up at, a busy shopping center, easily get 15 leads if you have somebody talkative. If there's a bunch of people walking around, cool, oh, what are you doing? What'd you buy? Oh, easily get 15 leads. A lot of people doing digital marketing right now might get 1 lead a day, 2 leads a day. So you might get half a month worth of leads in a couple hours at a busy place where you're able to set up a table. So I really feel like that's going to be the difference that's going to change the industry, is getting back to humanity. Go out and talk to people in person, shake their actual hand, ask them their problems in person, and you're going to start getting a lot more leads. And the quality of those leads are so different. I just had a 20-minute conversation with you. Are you likely to show up? Probably. Instead of just saw you filled out a Facebook thing, see you tomorrow at 6. The quality of those leads are different as well. So I really believe that's why we've seen this problem. As soon as Facebook changed that, you saw everybody starting to have a decline. And the reason that nobody's going on the incline is they haven't pivoted in a direction that's going to fix that. And I really believe that that's the direction that people have to go.
Is that an area that you've found as being personally successful, those going out into the community, shopping centers?
Yeah, when we can get them to do it. We face the same thing that I'm saying everyone else is. We're no exception to that, is I've got people that don't have those skills. And so it's been an uphill battle for us, is they couldn't set up an on-site. I'd send them out I had a whole month and I said, your entire month, your goal is this calendar. I want every week for there to be solutions for somewhere that agrees. You can give them free memberships, free challenges, free anything. Do trade outs of any sort you need. They couldn't do it. I can't. I said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go out, or I'm going to have my wife go out, and I'm going to make you a bet. The first place we go to, I'm going to get them to say yes, and I'm firing you. I'm going to have to make this really harsh, because I'm telling you that you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. You're doing what you want to do. And so one of the big things that I think would be helpful for people that are watching too, that helped us, even though they didn't listen in the beginning, is I said, I know that you're going in there and you're just asking them if you can set up a table. And I said, that's not what anybody wants, and nobody wants your table in front of their business. So one of the ideas that I told them is I said, I want you to go in when the manager's not there to this busy gas station. I want you to go in and I want you to ask a person that works there, what are some of the items that you guys are really trying to move? What are your goals for retail? Is there new stuff you guys are trying to push? Oh, these energy drinks. We really want to move those energy drinks. Great. When's your manager going to be here? When the manager's there, go back and say, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to buy a case of those energy drinks, and I'm going to sit out front and I'm going to hand them out for free. And as I hand them out for free, I'm also going to give people a free pass to our gym and talk to them a little bit about our gym. It'll help you drive the sales of those energy drinks. It's not going to make me look like an annoying guy because somebody got something for free. And now I could talk to some of your patrons and also give them a free gift of fitness. They're going to be much more likely to say, that sounds great because you're actually doing something for me, other than annoying me and just asking me for something for yourself. So they started to have more success with that. They got a few set up. This month we've got another one that they're going out to. But it's been that process of not macro coaching, but very micro coaching. I was used to being able to say, like, to me, common sense was you're going to go out, offer them something and do it. And they're not used to doing that. So they just go out and they just say, hey, can I set a table up here? So you really have to break it down exactly what to say, exactly where to go, and then hold them accountable. But when you do that, they still do it awkwardly, but over time, I think that those skills are going to develop and they're going to get better at it.
Coming up next.
Going out into the world and putting yourself out there is such an essential part of us as human beings. We are social creatures. We're supposed to be in these social settings.
What are some of the unachieved goals that you're got your eyes set on next in your outside of delivering your fitness equipment?
Really what I want to do is what I'm continuing to do with this business, which is I want to wake up in the morning and just do stuff that I really enjoy doing, that I'm passionate about. Out of all these years of human existence and all these people and all these years of gym equipment that was made, I made something different that fulfilled a need that nobody else made. It's like this really cool sense of pride. You have to be able to celebrate the small wins, and you have to course correct even in the small errors. And if you can do that, then you kind of keep yourself kind of small, bouncing on that line.
Do you think that with the advent of things like social media, where there was probably a demographic that kind of understood social media and also understand a lot of the traditional stuff that you did, do you think now as younger people come through that they've never had that, so when you can't rely on digital, there's a big skill gap and confidence gap in being able to attract those sorts of people?
Yeah, and that's why I don't blame them for it. As I've come to understand that, it's not a matter of them being lazy or stupid. It's not a skill that they have. They've never socialized that way. They've never had to go out and talk to people in that manner. So to me, it was hard because I didn't think that was a skill. Like, to me, I was like, I'm telling you what to say. Just go offer them a free membership or whatever and ask if we can set this up. But then you realize, like, okay, we really are at a place where they're very uncomfortable as well as unskilled. And so that's a different dynamic. So when you got somebody who's really nervous and unskilled, that's not a great seller. People don't want to, it's hard to buy from that person. So once they got two elements, we started selling larger packages, which was something that we changed, and the outreach. They were really uncomfortable with both. And what I noticed was as soon as they had one success, and we greatly celebrated it, everybody celebrated it, they started getting hyped up. And after just one success, it was a noticeable difference. After everybody celebrated it, they started feeling more comfortable and confident. And so that's kind of the pattern we've had now, is like they land an on-site, it's a celebration. It's Christmas. Oh my gosh, you did it. And everybody feels good. A lot of that feel good. And then they start to go, it's like, hey, you did it once, why couldn't you do it again? And so it's really starting from those basics and really looking at it as a skill that's essential. They're not only lacking the skills, but they're really lacking the confidence. And it just took a while because poor leadership on my part was not recognizing the amount of effort that was needed to get that problem fixed. But, here we are now, so it's getting better.
It's interesting because fitness is very much a people business. And I think about my kids, and although we've really encouraged them they're very social, we limit any time on devices. We make sure they go out and talk to people and have that confidence. But when you think of how life is in general, and we even chatted about it, like where, ordering food, you don't have to talk to anyone in the shop anymore. Ordering a taxi or an Uber, you don't really have to talk to the person anymore. If you want to go on a date, like years ago, for guys, like that was hard work. You have to dress up and go and, be outnumbered with less women and guys, and
get shot down 9 times till you hope. Yeah, no, for sure. You had to be brave. You had to be resilient. Yeah, it was a different game.
So even just to kind of take your genes onto the next, you had to kind of develop those skills quite early on, and I think now it's just. It's becoming quite lost in a generation because there's very few examples really where you kind of need to do that. Is there?
Yeah. And I think that a huge thing that I've talked about a lot is rejection is a huge part of development that people need, I think especially men, is when you're rejected, it makes you reflect. And so I think back on the times where I was rejected, whether it was socially by friends or other things, as you sit down and go, I don't want that to happen again. Why'd that happen? I'm not going to say that again, or I'm not going to do that again. We live in a time where people, one, don't have to be rejected much if they don't want to. They don't have to put themselves in situations. I'll swipe in this direction, and if nobody else swipes, that's not that they rejected me, I'm swiping to the next one until somebody does. So there's a lot of those situations where they don't have to feel that level of rejection, and I think that leads to a lot of problems, because when you're not being rejected, you're not being faced with the potential areas that you need to develop and get better in. And that is one of those is socially, So if you're sitting at home and avoiding that rejection, it's not only not allowing you to develop as a man or as an individual, but it's also preventing you from developing in every other area that's going to make you better in life and work. So yeah, I think that going out into the world and putting yourself out there is such an essential part of us as human beings. We are social creatures. We're supposed to be in these social settings. And when things don't work out, we course correct. That was a bad move. People didn't like that. I should stop doing that. Okay, so that's how we kind of learn. But when you don't have that, what do we end up with?
Well, an interesting thing you said there, and I had someone, I don't know whether it's a podcast or something, but you've also got the opposite scenario where now, if you disagree with someone, you can pretty much say the worst thing possible to that person. And you can really tear into someone. But in a real life situation, like particularly guys, if it's a group of guys and you said that, like, one thing is you've got to pick your words. I've been thumped on the nose a number of times.
Right. Right.
And so you kind of, you learn to think first before you mouth off. And I think also that's been lost a little bit. I don't know what that creates. Maybe a lot of bitter people, a lot of angry people, and a lot of people that probably can't necessarily communicate themselves well. But when I was a kid, a lot of times I said stupid stuff and it hurts.
For sure.
And I'm always careful now because I still live in the real world. I would never sort of say stuff online because you're like, always looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, you're going to meet that person one day. I think that it translates to more, like, for sure I've had that many times where I'm like, let me guess, this is an account that's private with no profile picture. Okay, you're somebody in someone's basement with this burner account and you go around and say things you would never say in real life. And so that's one aspect where you do have these people that run that risk. You go say that in the real world, and all of a sudden you're going to end up, in a weird spot. The last physical altercation that I had, the person was genuinely confused, and I was confused that they were confused. I'm like, this is a confusing thing that you didn't think this was going to happen. And so I think that's one problem, but almost on a bigger end is a lot of those people might not have the bravery to say it in public. So maybe they'll just stay quiet. That's fine. But when they start to think that that's an acceptable way to speak to people, it doesn't just have to be in a public setting to a man. That's the way they start to speak to their boss, their coworkers, and you start to notice that these people, that is their psyche. This is when they don't like something, they rattle off these really crazy things. And even if they tone it down a little bit, I've still noticed, like, and I'm not even 40, but I feel old saying it, but it's like this generation they speak in ways, they show up to an interview in ways and speak to ways and act in ways on the workplace that I've never seen before, let alone would I ever do. And I do believe that it's small things like that that contribute to that. These people come into the workplace, this is the way they're used to talking, and they just think they can say these things. And I'm like, I don't understand why you believe that's the case, but it has to be because that's how they live. That's how they talk. So yeah, all of these things, those people don't think it's damaging. But sitting behind your screen and coming to a false reality that that's how the world works is only going to hurt you, whether it's because you're going to get punched in the face or because you're going to get fired at work or because you're not going to have friends. But people don't speak that way without repercussions to some extent, and it might not always be getting punched in the face, but it's going to come around in another way because that's just not the way that people live with positive benefits that come from it.
And it wouldn't surprise me, like there's definitely an increase in depression, mental health issues, and even suicides. And I don't know, but I can certainly see that the more of the digital world you live in, which is a very different reality to the real world, you can kind of understand how you create this reality about other people,
for sure,
how to interact, how not. It's a very sort of, although you don't feel lonely, you can see how it's got to be lonely because you're on your own with a screen.
For sure. Well, even like I had mentioned earlier about the high school thing, is I only had to be the style of the coolest kid in my high school. It's the same thing as far as popularity went, is I only had to be as cool as the cool guy in my high school. Now you got to be as cool as the cool guy in every high school. You know, so it's like you open this up and you're like, oh my God, like everybody's better looking than me. Everybody has this. So, I mean, I remember feeling that way when I was just comparing myself to kids in a high school. You're comparing yourself to a couple hundred people. Now you're having to look at that all the time. So I think it's like, there has to be actual training for children for them to understand. You're putting them in front of this. And I think that anyone that has any basic knowledge knows that it has very potential dangers, but there isn't any sort of real conversations that are had or in-depth psychological explanations so that people can use it in the right way. You've got kids that just go, I'm 14 and every 14-year-old on here makes $8 million on YouTube. And like, no, they all don't make $8 million on YouTube. I don't know what the study was, but they had asked the youth what they wanted to do, whether it was the study was last year or whatever. And the majority had said that they wanted to be YouTube millionaires or whatever. And so that's what our youth wants. All of our youth thinks that's what the future is to just be making videos and making millions of dollars. And it's like, there's not that many of those people. And like, that's not the reality of the world, but they think that that's a possibility and that just all of us could be millionaires on YouTube. So I just think there has to be, parents have to catch up to this stuff too and be like, hey, like this is kind of getting crazy. And not that a kid can't aspire to necessarily do that, but I think that it's a problem when all of these kids think that that's their reality. They're either a YouTube millionaire or they're incredibly depressed. Is like, those are two rough options, and there should be stuff in between.
Yeah, the education's an interesting part, because even I think of sales and negotiation courses, which are both sides of the same thing. You know, you kind of want to learn both of them, but when you've got some of the brightest minds in the world and unlimited resources to put at basically getting you addicted to going into that, it's quite scary. And even I certainly control and limit it and try to use it for business. But if I ever have to go in there, you know, sometimes when I'm researching for podcasts, I'll go in and look at, like I did for you last night. And all I wanted to do is get onto your page. And before you know it, I was like, where the hell am I? How did I get here?
And then you're on this other thing and it's showing you how to make a cheeseburger that you, now all of a sudden you're watching this cheeseburger recipe. Yeah, it sucks you in for sure. Yeah.
So you got to be very, like, you can imagine kids' minds are just like, you know, it's like giving them, you know, opium. You're like, they're done, aren't they, really?
Yeah, I feel like there just has to be that conversation like, listen, those people's lives don't look like that all the time, you know, and this is how the real world works, and I'll explain it to you very clearly. That is the best of 84 pictures that they took, okay? They don't look like that all the time, and they actually didn't look like that there, because 83 other times they didn't look that good. So you need to understand that before you compare yourself to that, because it absolutely has to be a massive reason why depression and everything. You look at every person, and if every person's life looks like it's flawless, and you start to compare yours, of course it looks like shit, because so does theirs. You know, their life actually isn't good either, but you don't get to see that part. So yeah, it's a crazy, crazy dynamic. But I think that over time, that's going to be more understood and more talked about, because it can't keep going in this direction without any sort of education.
Equipment, it's a big part. It's something that, it's a new initiative that you're doing, and I'd like to talk about that. But take us back to the origins, because when I came to see you at your last facility, you were showing me a lot of these dual-purpose machines, and they have obviously been integral to your fitness concept. So explain how that started, what were some of the early ideas that you had, and how that's kind of led you to where you are today with your recent products.
Yeah, so when we first started, it was, like I said, the foundation has always been, how do I offer a true resistance training program? And I couldn't do it without the equipment. When I was at a boot camp at a park, I had a U-Haul truck, and you'd pull out these Chuck Norris total gyms. And like, even back then, I was trying to incorporate equipment to do more than people were doing at an outdoor program. But that just kind of evolved. Eventually, I met somebody who was selling his retail gym store. And while I was in there, I basically was talking to him, and he said, yeah, I make some of my own products in China. I just asked him, hey, would you mind if I went with you? And so he was like, sure. And so he ended up going like a month later, went over there, visited a bunch of factories, and started figuring things out, built some relationships, and started kind of just scratching. I went back to my hotel room and started scribbling some ideas on a piece of paper. And, you know, it took me down just kind of a rabbit hole. I think that's the part that stops a lot of people is, you know, in my mind, I was like, I'm not an engineer. I didn't even graduate high school, so I'm nothing. and I can't even draw good, so I can't even barely draw the idea. So what's the next step, and how do I make this real? And so it just kind of like in my mind was like, I'm just gonna figure out the next step at a time. So I don't know how many steps that's gonna take, but I know I need to get it from this drawing to something that looks more like a drawing, that looks more reasonable. Who do I know that could do that, or how could I find someone? My brother-in-law he went to school for engineering and architecture. He didn't finish, but he's also a graphic designer. So he had kind of like this combination of really great skills that could help me do that. So he kind of brought those ideas more to life that were closer to where they needed to be. Then I was able to visit enough factories to where I'd built a relationship with some of the top engineers there that were really willing to take on that project and help me with it. And so it's just one step after another, and we created a couple of pieces. So we had these few units that really allowed me to do a lot of stuff in the group setting. But as I would post those, there would be a lot of trainers or people with home gyms that were always like, what is that piece of equipment in the background? What are you guys using? So for over those years, I kept thinking that need that I've had, somebody else is going to create eventually. So here we are 17 years into this. I've wanted this since I was at a park, and nobody's catered to this need that I have seen as a personal trainer or small group training instructor. So I was like, eventually I got to the point where I was like, I need to create more equipment for my own gyms. So I started kind of scribbling stuff and was like, I'm going to create this whole line to really revolutionize our own gyms. And as I started showing little bits of stuff, just because I'm passionate about it and really just loved it, like I dove into it and found that I really, really enjoyed it. So I would share some of it on social media, and it just got like a crazy, crazy amount of attention. I had shared one of the renderings on my page, and it got picked up on the largest pages on Instagram, and it blew up. So it went from, I'll probably make this in a while after I've made these other units, to let's make this right now and we'll launch it to the public. So it kind of shifted gears quickly. You know, they say when opportunity strikes, you know, and so I wasn't gonna sleep on it. So we ended up kind of launching the unit, but that wasn't even the intention. The intention was just, how do we make our gyms better? How do we offer more of that equipment in the gym? And it just turned out that I wasn't the only person that really wanted that type of equipment, and the community kind of spoke, so we ended up dropping it. And now our docket has over 60 patents, and we have a bunch of units in the works, and it's been really, really fun.
Explain about the isolator then. Talk me through like the first version and what you've now launched.
Yeah, so the idea of that was kind of, I wanted to basically do some of the main movements that I wanted in my own gym was the first idea. So that's why I first started working on it, was I really wanted to do leg extensions, prone leg curls, preacher curls, tricep movements. So I was like, what could do that? And I want it to be, in a group setting, I need my trainers that are setting up for workouts to be able to set this up and tear it down, or, slide it to the bottom of the rack and still use barbells. So standalone units weren't the idea. It was like, how do I make this in an attachment that could fit the need of my gym, was the main focus. And so as we started designing that was the main reason why. And then as people had interest, it just kind of made sense, because it's a smaller unit to ship, to produce. So it kind of started to make sense, like this could be our first unit to market. Also, everyone has interest in it anyways, but it's a little easier barrier of entry. It's not like this $6,000 unit. It's not this huge thing that has to be like freight shipped. So kind of those pieces just kind of fell in line. But the unit itself, I don't know if we've recorded 100 or 200 exercises, but I mean, it does a ton of different stuff. And the idea as the unit grew was, how do we do as many gym machine type exercises from this one attachment that has the lowest price point and requires the smallest amount of space? And so that was kind of the design aspect. And every time we would add things to it, that was the goal. It has to maintain a certain amount of weight, size, and cost. And so a lot of people, when they'll see it, they're like, it's a brilliant piece. And it really isn't. It's a linked lever arm to a linked weight arm. And then it has 2 ports that you basically can put a seat in or other things. The part that makes it appear genius is really just the precision that took time. Was every little 1/4 inch that you move that port would make it to where it might work for a preacher curl, but now it doesn't allow the knee to align for a leg extension. So that's really what took a lot of the time, was how do you make these things go into the right places to where from this exercise to this exercise, it doesn't totally throw all the movement off. And every time we would move something a 1/4 inch, it would throw off half of the exercises that we wanted to do. So it was a lot of that, just playing around and a handful of prototypes. But once we landed those precise areas where they had to be, it just kind of butter from there, and everything kind of worked good.
Can you attach it to any of the rig systems, or does it only go with your sort of framework?
Yeah, so it goes on any major rack. So 2x2, 2x3, 3x3, all different pin sizes. We kind of made a few different things that make it versatile for people that are even switching racks, where you can actually just remove the rear part, and you can buy say you have a 2x3, you remove 4 bolts, pull that back part of the carriage off, and you can throw a 3x3 one on there. So the idea from the beginning was, I want to try to make it adaptable for as many people as possible. So I don't want them to have to buy my rack. I wanted, if you have this rack already, it'll either fit on there, or you can just buy this cheap rear part of the section to put it on there, so that I could really expose as many people to it as possible. And so, yeah, I think that's part of the success also is a lot of the 2x2 racks, people don't make a lot of accessories for them because they're not as popular anymore. So I think that helped. And just a lot of the small things I also think built the community is the people appreciated that we were going the extra mile, even knowing we weren't going to get a lot of sales from those people. And so that's been kind of the fun part of it, is the way that I've seen it and the way that I've wanted it to go. The community has really been behind that too. Like, really, like, this is what we love to hear. You're making it, and you've made it affordable. And a lot of them have even said, we know you have patents on this. You could have, because it's proprietary, you could have charged a lot more. And we know that you're charging it at this rate. And so I just feel like some of the decisions that we've made have helped us, more and more to kind of build the community and kind of set us up for the next stuff. But yeah, it's been a much different venture than the gyms. The gyms they were a long grind. They took a lot of time. And we've been really blessed with this, where between the community's growth and support for us and the success of the unit has just been like not what I've experienced with our other business ventures, for sure.
You mentioned a community then. What is that to you? Because I've followed the product from very early days. You set on social media, you've done a great job at almost bringing people with you the whole journey, sharing sketches and talking about your challenges. And so there's been this whole story of almost like a serial of like, oh, well, what's going to happen next? Where's the product? Has that intentional, and who is it that you've been, when you say community, who are the people that you're speaking to in general?
Yeah. So I mean, and that part originally was just natural because I am genuinely excited about it. And the people, when they would give me feedback, a lot of the changes to current units, to units that are dropping, were feedback that were given by other people. We have our weight horn that faces front and side. We had a rectangle weight arm, and one of our followers was like, you should make it square, and then you could, instead of selling a side weight horn, it's universal, just put another hole in the other side. And so all these different perspectives, they feel invested in what we're doing. And you'd be surprised, like, a lot of these garage gym people are pretty bright. A lot of them make their own equipment and stuff. Like, they're a lot of really bright people. So I feel like as I was sharing and these people really felt the passion, these other people that are passionate about this really just kind of felt drawn to it. And then as we were doing it, I realized it was an important part of this. So as we've grown, I've maintained that part of it, even though it's been more challenging and takes a lot more time. But like, all the direct messages and all the correspondence is personally done by me. And the sharing of this stuff is, again, just kind of natural. It's like, I know these people are interested and I want to update them and I want to get their feedback. I want to hear what they have to say. And again, is sometimes those ideas are things that we implement and it makes the units better. But it's personal trainers and it's the home gym community is primarily what it is. And, I think that the people too is, I've told them we're creating this as a passion project first. And like, the people that'll ask for stuff, what about this or that? Like they'll say, well, can you estimate the price? I say, I don't design anything off of price. I design it off of what I see in my mind, and it's going to cost what it's going to cost. I obviously am going to try to keep the cost low for you guys, but overall, I'm creating the best product possible. And so I just think that the stuff that I already am passionate about and the way that I see it has drawn other people that see things the same way. And so it's just a really like-minded group of people that are like, cool, like, this guy's not trying to create the most expensive stuff or the cheapest stuff, he's creating the best stuff. And he's still gonna try to make it affordable, but that's what we're about. So I just think that it's drawn a group mainly of other people that are passionate about equipment, garage, gym stuff, personal trainers, and some people that are just interested to follow the story. I think some people look at it like, you're this one guy and all these other companies are bigger, and what's going to happen? Are you going to be a one-hit wonder, or are you going to drop this other unit? So some people are just following to see like what's going to happen with this guy.
Which is a great idea. I like it a lot, whether it's intentional or not. I think it's a really Knowing, I had conversations about the product a long time ago, but I think it's a very smart idea. The question I had to you was, knowing how much you put into patents, how have you balanced the sharing of the ideas, knowing that quite quickly someone's going to be looking at that maybe in China and potentially sort of beating to you in market? Like, how have you sort of navigated the amount that you tell and the bits that you come back because you want to get the best? You don't want to lose it to someone else.
Yeah. So that's been one, is a really hefty investment. Like, we have some of the best attorneys in China that actually, like, basically they flew out here. We had a meeting and I said, this is how aggressive I want us to be. Like, I actually want you to be in the factories and letting them know, like, we're representing them. I'm sure, like, there's certain companies that had a reputation that you didn't mess with. Stairmaster was one of them. I remember years ago, I just wanted my own Stairmaster. And when I'd been dealing with China, I was like, hey, can you guys just make me one? They're like, nobody will make you one. And I don't know what exactly Stairmaster did, but they played no games, because there wasn't a small factory in China that would make a Stairmaster. They knew better. So I've kind of gone about it in that route, as like, on that end, I have good IP and we have good attorneys here, but also on the China side, I'm like, I want you to be at these factories and let them know, like, here's what happens. Like, we're watching and we're going to make sure this doesn't happen. I also have a guy that I've hired in China that works full time for us. He's been doing this for 20 years. He knows every factory. He's in group WhatsApps. He sees anything that they're starting to make, any of these factories that get new ideas that start doing things. So he's my man on the ground that does other things, but that's another major aspect that he looks for. But at the end of the day, like, no matter how good you are with those things, you're still running that risk. And so there's still going to be those people that are going to roll the dice or try to run with that. So we've had like 4 interactions already. 2 of them are with bigger companies, and I was just really aggressive, and it kind of went away for now, at least. But I was just kind of like, hey, listen, one of the companies I respect quite a bit, and they make cool stuff. And so I told him, like, hey man, like, I want to be really honest. You guys make great stuff. You make cool stuff. You don't need to steal someone else's idea. You guys already make cool stuff. But I want to be honest. I've been in business for 17 years with my gyms. You can ask around from the legal community. I've never even made it to a courtroom. So every single person who's ever tried to sue me has gotten their ass handed to them before I ever met a courtroom. I'm the nicest guy in the world until I'm not. This is stuff I've worked on for a long time that I'm passionate about. I just want you to know, if you think I'm one of those guys that's just, that you guys are going to roll over because you're a bigger company, I'm not. And I'm well funded enough to make sure this doesn't go in your favor. And I'll definitely be pursuing you guys for damages. And so it was kind of like, not a disrespectful conversation, but it was like, I just want to be crystal clear about where this is. And I've had that conversation with a couple people, and I've had even just fans of the gym community mention that they've heard that now. There was somebody with one of the bigger companies that said they had heard about those conversations. So I think that word kind of gets around to that. Is like, look, he's not a bad guy, but he's very serious about this, and he's not some guy that's in his garage. He is well funded enough to protect this. So I think it just makes those bigger companies, or even smaller companies, really look at it differently. If I was a guy with a welder and I made it, a lot of the time, unfortunately, they assess it based on what it's worth to them financially. Am I going to be able to drag this guy through court to where he can't afford it or not? And what's this going to benefit? So I think the combination of those things have, at least for now, kind of weighed in my favor, to where it's kind of made people at least think twice about it. I'm not naive enough to think that I'm never going to have any problems. But I also believe that the way that I'm going about it is the way that genuinely makes me happy. I love including the community. I really think it makes the products better. Their contribution does make the end product better. So right now, it's been something that I've continued to roll the dice on and hope that we go in a good direction. And I think that, like anything in business, time tells. A year from now, if we have another interview, maybe I say something different. But right now, the game plan's worked okay for right now. And I do, like I said, not only do I enjoy it, but the community's contributions, I really think, help refine and make the products better. So I'm gonna keep pushing down that, and hopefully next time we talk, I don't have like 12 lawsuits or something, and it keeps working in my favor.
I think it's a clever idea. I think it's very novel. It makes sense with a lot of the equipment trends that are out there, and if you can kind of hold on to what you've created, I think it's a great business. I've been in the equipment space for quite a long time, and sometimes the sort of simple, obvious things are things that most people look over. So it is really cool. I'd love to try it and see how it actually feels, because combining, I think, even dual pieces are very, very difficult to do. There's always one of them is a compromise.
Yeah.
And so, being able to kind of be fairly successful at more than one movement in one unit, particularly if it's targeted at that predominantly kind of consumer market, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, you have to embrace the challenge for sure. And people don't want real compromise. So like the isolator, one of the things I'm proud of is, people will tell you, like, it feels like a great leg extension. It feels like a great leg curl. Does it feel exactly like a commercial unit? Maybe not, but really close. So you don't really feel like you're sacrificing. And that's really what in the beginning, it was just myself and my brother-in-law. Now we've hired some engineers, but even in the beginning, as I said, that's the end goal. I have to get on it and feel like I'm not compromising. It can't feel like this is something I'm just accepting because of anything else. And so that unit definitely accomplished that. We don't ever get anyone that hits us up and goes, this movement just feels terrible, or this feels way off. Like, all of them feel really good. That's a challenge for the next units that we have. We've got quite a few more units, and they're more versatile than that. They're standalone pieces, and it's a big challenge. So not for the faint of heart. You have to really have fun with it, because otherwise it can just be incredibly frustrating. You can spend 2 months on a design that you're this close to finishing, and you realize, well, now I got to move this way, and it just ruined everything, and you kind of start all over. So for me, I actually have fun with it, where a lot of other business stuff, if it doesn't go right, it frustrates me. So that's how I knew this was for me. Like, my wife would be like, oh, that design didn't work. I'm like, nah. I'm like, but here's a cool one I'm starting on. She's like, I was waiting for it to be a bad night. I'm like, no, I'm excited to start on a new one. She's like, this is definitely the business you need to be doing. Like, I thought this was going to be a horrible night and you were going to be upset. I'm like, no, I like doing it. So, yeah.
There's something about, and I guess it's not for everybody, but I think it's something about solving problems. I'm probably similar to you when it comes to that. I'm not frustrated. It's almost like you end up taking it to a high level, and you kind of know that it's going to be very difficult for someone else to figure it out, because you know how hard it is for you to figure it out. So you're like, oh, I'm onto something now.
And it makes you even more proud and excited. You start getting like, oh, then it's like, if you really love it, you have that self-pride. And that's something that I really love is Sorinex has a cool, it's like their lever arm, but they have a really simple kickstand that allows you to do belt squats with. It's super simple design, but it's ingenious. It works great. My pendulum squat, I had added something like that to be able to slide it down to do that. And someone said, hey, I think Sorinex has a patent on that. They never pursue anybody for it. Everybody knocks it off. But I said, I don't want to take anybody's stuff. I don't care if they pursue for it or not. So I'm going to start all over. And it made me go all the way back and create this entirely new mechanism that's way better, that allows me to do way more exercises. And it was I think a really important early lesson for me is like, you went the path that you were supposed to go. Like, it was so easy. People are showing me all these other companies that do it. Like, you're never going to get in trouble. I could have done it. But integrity-wise, I was like, if I don't want people to copy me, how am I supposed to go off and copy them just because they're not going to chase me? And doing the right thing led me to such a better product. And I had a sense of pride because I had created something totally new. And so I had to kind of bring myself back to that. It's like, that's why you're doing this. You didn't start this company to make it huge and make a ton of money. You started it because you wanted to create cool stuff. So don't take the easy route and do something, even if it's something you can get away with. So,
and those stories also, I think, are important when you come to selling the product. I know, like, we've had over the years made so many things that haven't worked, and then figured out a way to do it. And those are what kind of sets you apart. Even simple things like dumbbells. We've got so many stories on those.
Yeah.
And but just being able to tell the stories about what happened in China and the issues with the rubbers, the materials, the urethanes, the putting it together, the curing times, the logos, like all of that stuff.
Yep.
And he's like, actually, I know now. We know every single little bit about this, and I think it. One, I guess it's quite good to know exactly what's going on. I think that. For sure. But also when you're explaining to people about it, it's like, okay, yeah, they've not just knocked something off and bashed it out. There's a lot of energy that's gone into this. And to your point, I think you either decide to make the best product in the world or just be an also-ran. And I do feel that if you can be making what you think is the best product in the world, like that's a great feeling to,
for
and
sure.
It generally, I don't know in most cases, but if you can actually get it out, in most cases, those things tend to work because there's always somebody that appreciates the best thing there is.
For sure. And I think that, I won't name the names, but there were two companies, a big company and a small company, that got into some drama recently where the small company was making something really cool and the big company made what people considered a knockoff. So some people weren't saying it was, other people were saying it was. But so many people stood behind this small company that the larger company kind of worked with them and they created a deal, and now everything's worked out and everything's really great. And that was something that was so good for me to see, because I feel like the unfortunate part is human nature is I'd rather not look that direction if I could make a deal over here. Even if this company stole from that guy and it was bad, I don't know that guy that good and I want this cheaper product. And I feel like the fitness equipment space has really had those vibes in the earlier times that I was getting into this. When I saw that, it was like this restored faith of, I think, kind of a different time, where these people drew a connection to this smaller company and they cared about that individual's products and the work that he put into them. And when they felt somebody was trying to harm them, they were like, no, like as a community, we're not standing for that. This is not okay. And I think that's a really cool thing. And I don't think people realize how much that's going to benefit everybody in this community, because there are so many small guys that have a garage that have brilliant ideas that don't want to bring them to market because they've seen so many people get fucked over. And they're like, I'm not going to do this and then have somebody steal the idea from me because I'm a construction worker. I don't have the money to fight for this. When we stand up for the small guy and everybody gets on the same playing field and the big guys go, don't do that. That was bad press. That was bad PR. That was not what we need. So we're not doing that anymore. Well, now everybody that sees that, you have so many of these brilliant young guys, older guys that have these ideas that feel safer to bring cool stuff to the market. And I think that's just going to be an explosion of innovation if we see more of that. Because you'd be shocked how many people hit me up and ask me to make a product that they've made. And I'm like, you've already designed it. And they're like, yeah, but I know the big companies will try to steal it and blah, blah, blah. And I'd rather you can produce it. And I hate hearing that. It's like, you got a cool idea, just go do it, but I understand their fear. So I think that's something that's really cool, is I do feel like me sharing my story as I go along, this other small company and these other small people talking about how these products mean more to them than just money, and they're really making really cool stuff. The real enthusiasts of fitness equipment are standing behind that, and I think it's really starting to create more of an even keel, and it's just gonna bring more and more cool stuff to the market.
It's better for the consumer. I was chatting about this last night in a different area, but the challenge is with companies that, when you get to a certain size, it's very easy to have so much dominance, because you can just outspend, outmarket, and even when you're certainly on the commercial space, you can just do deals that the small company just can't dream of doing. And I suppose there's two things about that. Number one is, if you make the best product you can, you're always going to make it better than, you're always going to be in a better position than, I guess, a huge company, because you can put that passion into it.
Yep.
But the only way you're going to do that is genuinely make something that's absolutely brilliant. So you got to stand out on your own. The other thing is, I do feel that whether it's in fashion or retail or whatever, even Amazon is a great example. Your choices are basically controlled by what makes sense from a business perspective, margins, volume, buying prices, shipping, et cetera, et cetera. And so you end up with this kind of like, okay, well, the only stuff, and it's an example of like on social media, the stuff you see is the stuff you click on, and you just get more and more of that stuff. And very rarely do you sort of see things outside of it that you would never consider, and an algorithm doesn't know that you would consider that. And I think for things like, whether it's clothing, which is another interesting one, or fitness equipment, I think there's so many brilliant people out there with brilliant ideas, and but they, very, very difficult, as you said, to get it to life. And I think one of the positive things about social media is it allows a little guy in a garage to knock something up, to pop up a Shopify website and to start selling it, and suddenly, like even your product, suddenly there's something there that people can buy that probably wouldn't have made sense for a lot of people to do.
Right.
But it's a great solution. It solves a great problem, and I think it's a good thing for these small sort of artisans to be able to sort of go out there and do something that they're just passionate about, because the reason you make equipment is because you want to make something that feels good, that as an expert. A lot of companies are doing it because it makes good business sense, and there's a big difference to that. If you can combine it, that's great, but in a lot of cases, it's one or the other.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you're seeing more of that stuff is because you have more of a passionate community. You can take a guy, even if he doesn't have a big social presence, people are hungry for that innovation now. So you're seeing people, you go in these Discord groups, which I'll make myself sound old again. I just actually suck with technology, but I was never part of Discord groups. And these people are like, you got to get on here, you got to get on here. And there's these huge
What is
groups.
the Discord group? Because I'm not on there. What is it?
Like a community chat type of thing. So don't ask me details, okay? I just figured out how to use it. They added me to it. But they'll have these different subcategories that'll be like, one of the ones that I'm in is bougie fitness equipment. So these are really educated people that you can ask them pretty much anything on fitness, and they know every piece of equipment. They've known, it's pretty wild. So it's not a huge group of people, like thousands of people, but you might have anywhere from like 30 people to a few hundred people. And I go on that group, they had added me to that group. And I mean, I use a few of those people as like, they are really interested in what I do, and they're kind of like part of the team. They consult with me as I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? They're like, people want this, people want that, people want this. And so you have these people that are hungry for this innovation, that are intelligent people that know what's out there and what isn't. And so when you have this, even if you have a small social media platform and you provide something great, those people, it's eventually going to be found and it's going to be spread because people are hungry for it. They want it. So I think the social media is a big part of it. And I do think that the other part is, like you had mentioned, is where you're coming from as what you're creating. I do think people resonate with somebody who's creating something that they want to be the best and because they want to make it. I think we live in a time where people care where their money goes, not just the product, but the person. If I don't like you, I don't want to buy from you. I don't care if you make something cool. That's how a lot of people feel. If they hear you and they feel your passion and they're like, man, I want to fund this because I believe in it, and that'll go to the next cool thing. And I feel like I'm a part of this revolution, this movement. If you're a creator and you have that much passion, you have to share that, because I really think it resonates with people and they want to spread your message. You could have 80 followers. You carry that message and all of a sudden that's shared everywhere. So yeah, it can be definitely a powerful thing.
So you've had an interesting career. You've gym business, fitness equipment business, been in it for sort of, getting close to 20 years, I think, 17 going on 20. What are some of the unachieved goals that you're got your eyes set on next in your outside of delivering your fitness equipment, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I was actually telling my wife, like, I consider that I have core goals and then I just have ongoing goals. I'm somebody that's driven by ongoing goals, but I have core goals. And I don't have any more core goals, really. Like I said, we're building an addition for her mom to move in. Like, I've always wanted to be close to family and take care of my family. I always wanted to have my dream cars and things like that. So I had these core goals, and all of those have been accomplished. And now is really what I want to do is what I'm continuing to do with this business, which is I want to wake up in the morning and just do stuff that I really enjoy doing, that I'm passionate about. I'm kind of a different individual than some people that just want to sit on a beach. That would just drive me crazy. So I want to find a mix of traveling with my wife and doing that while still pursuing something of purpose that, as we spoke about, makes me have self-pride and creation in doing something. So I kind of, I don't even have my next goals really, as I feel it's a weird thing for somebody who's always driven by goals, but like physique-wise, from being a bodybuilder, there was always something that I wanted to achieve with my body. And like for the first time probably in my life, I feel pretty good with the shape that I'm in. Like I wouldn't need to do anything. There's nothing that I'm really working on. You can always, as a bodybuilder, you're always tweaking things, but there's no major thing as far as business, as far as all those other things. So like at this point, the main goal is spend time with the people I care about, and I don't really have extrinsic goals, and just bring the stuff that I love, just keep bringing it to the market and keep doing this stuff.
I guess it's nice. I was chatting to someone, in fact, it was a podcast that goes out this week, Paul Lubix, and he was talking to me about a similar thing, whereas if you can live the rest of your life where you have a purpose, something to go at, but every day you're doing what you love. Yep. He's got a really interesting company coaching and doing these big adventures around the world. And he said, look, I'm building a business around things that I would just like to do. And through that, attracting other like-minded people that are interested in, investing in the products I'm doing. But he very much said that I'm making this stuff for me.
Yeah,
which is quite interesting, because a lot of time, I suppose, it's it's always like, well, who are you doing this for? And you're trying to keep this person happy and that person happy, and it's like, well, you're never going to understand how to do that, but you're always going to know what makes you happy.
Yep.
And there's probably a number of people like you or me.
Yeah, I think there's levels to that. I think you can tell somebody that's going into their first venture or even their second venture that, and it won't totally make sense because the money comes first. It's like I have to do what makes sense. These are where my skills are. This is what I found this niche. And so I don't take away from that. I think sometimes your first venture has to be that. That's how you're going to develop your skills. But what I say is when you're doing that, make sure to develop yourself. Don't just hire people to do things. Like you said, you go and learn all of these things. That's going to put you in a position to where when that venture, you've outlived that, you either just don't enjoy it anymore, maybe you never enjoyed it, you made the money you needed to make doing it, but you're ready to move on to something that truly fulfills you. You've taken the time not just to do what the business needed or to make money from the business, but you took time to truly learn to become a better entrepreneur. So now you're well-rounded enough to really go off and do anything else you want. And that was a huge thing for me with this. It was scary, but proved to me that I did do those things that I thought I was doing. I thought that I was investing in myself to be a better marketer. I thought that I was doing myself justice by being better with social media, even though I'm not good with technology. Like I was doing all these things that I felt I had gotten better at that would allow me to translate into doing whatever else I wanted to do. But it's still a scary thing and you don't know what you've learned until you apply it. And so it felt really good launching that and being like, okay, like I have developed those skills to be able to go off and do something that I love. So looking at that first venture, you're going to find, where there's a need and where your skills kind of cross, and you're going to go make money. But you tell a poor person that money isn't the only thing that's going to fulfill them, and they're going to tell you, yeah, right, give me money and I'll go cry in a Ferrari. So you let them go through that, and then they'll come to that point where they'll say, you're right, and then they go off and they find what fulfills them. And that was me. If you told me 17 years ago, money won't make you happy, I'd be like, then give me the money and I'll show you happiness. Like I'll show you you're wrong. But I think that a lot of people have to learn that themselves. And
do you think sometimes though that I've watched you for a number of years, and I very much sense that you've even the hardcore fitness, you've really created something that you believe in, the type of workout, the equipment, you've really created that around it's almost like inside out, and it just happens that it's been relevant for a lot of people, and you've been extremely successful with that, where a lot of people have, there must be hundreds of people and trainers that have got kind of similar style gyms that have not had anywhere near the success, but you've almost built that for yourself, and it's worked, and then you've done the equipment. So do you think that when the money, in terms of if someone wants money, rather than trying to look outside of themselves for how to do that, is to almost look inside and say, okay, look, if what am I passionate about? What do I believe in?
For sure. I think that if you can, like I always say, is that you meet a guy that trades stocks, and he goes, I don't like trading stocks, but I do well at it. I'll always say is it's not that you can't go off and do something you don't love and make money, but you take that same guy who excels at selling stocks and now make him go do something he's passionate about, and I feel that he's going to be 10 times more successful. So, and probably 10 times happier. So if you want to be happy, that's also an element you should consider. I think that there are some people, say maybe they're doing Amazon or something like that, is they find an opportunity to, as a stepping stone that they aren't truly passionate about. Sometimes that's where your road kind of led you. And so I think that if that's the case, it's not that you did something wrong. You don't have to necessarily love that first venture if that isn't how it worked out. But I would definitely say try, my first venture I did, that was all passion. So each of the businesses that I've started were out of things that I really loved. And I do contribute that to part of why they're successful. I think that you get into business for a certain period of time, and even as we just talked about with the design, work on a design for a piece of equipment for months and it falls apart and you have to start over. If you don't really love doing it, you're pissed. You don't want to do that anymore, and you're not going to be in the right frame of mind to go right back to the drawing board, and it's going to be very discouraging. So that's the intangible that's hard to explain to people, because they just see, if I'm making the money, I'm going to be happy and I'll do what I have to do, and I'm gritty and I'm determined. That's fine. If you're gritty and you're determined, you still have a threshold. The threshold of that same gritty, determined person is so much further when they're actually passionate about it, because a lot of that stuff that is grit for the first person is still fun for the other person. They don't consider that to be a strain. So their threshold is so much further. And that's just something that I didn't even know when I went into this business, and experiences I'd see other people and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe these long days. And I'm like, I'm having fun doing this. It is long, but I don't consider it work really, And so that's a dynamic that I think people should consider. If you have to do something you're not passionate about, do what you have to do, but use it as a stepping stone to bring it into something, not just passion, because passion's said a lot, but I think fulfillment is the big part that people have to understand. It's like, you can enjoy doing it. You and I talked about is that self-pride. You created something. It's like, there's something that's really prolific about looking in the mirror and being truly proud of yourself. It's not an arrogance, it's not a cockiness, it's like pride. Like, I made something. Like, these thoughts that go through my head is, I'm like, out of all these years of human existence and all these people and all these years of gym equipment that was made, I made something different that fulfilled a need that nobody else made. Is like this really cool sense of pride that you have this contribution to community of something that you did that's really special. And everybody has that different thing that would make them feel that way. But once you get past buying the cars and doing the other stuff, I promise you, if you're not pursuing that, there's going to be a hole that you're going to be trying to fill.
Yeah, good point. Final question. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and made it possible. What would you say in the last 4 or 5 years has been an example of where you've escaped your own personal limits?
Yeah, I would say that I've had a lot of stuff just even with, friends, personal relationships in the business, a lot of struggles like that coincided with other business, just regular business issues at the same time. And I think that I was pushed to a point where we all think that we have this breaking point. And I remember that I would think, like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just going to lay in bed like I'm broken, I'm done. And I would get up and I would keep doing things. And so I feel like that was kind of a point where the mixture of the personal and the business, when it got to a point where it was so extreme and there was so much disappointment from so many different directions, but I was still getting up and doing what needed to be done, was something where I exceeded my limits. As I personally remember thinking, going to sleep multiple nights, that was it. That was the last straw. I mean, there's nothing left. I don't have any mental power, emotional power. I'm going to just lay in bed and I got nothing left. And somehow I was up and I was working the next day. So
what do you think, because I've had many of those nights as well.
Yeah.
What do you think it was that kind of kept the light on at the end of the tunnel for you to, like, okay, I got to keep doing this? Because there must have been something that...
Yeah, and I've thought about that too, because I've talked to my wife about it, and she's even been like, because she's encouraged me, just lay in bed, like just lay in bed. And she's like I could do a whole podcast just on her. She's like superwoman. So she's a huge part of my success. But she's, when I'm at that point, she's like, there's no harm in taking a little time. Like, go ahead and chill out. And when I would get up and keep doing it, she's like, why? Like, why are you doing it? And, I'll ask myself that. And I think part of it is it's either built in you or it's built over time. Something in you just isn't going to lay down. So it's not even that it's an actual thought maybe at first. Maybe you just get up because you're just like, I'm just not going to lay here. So like, I'm going to get up. You don't have actual internal dialogue maybe. You're just like, I'm going to get up. And then there are other times where I know in my mind I was thinking, like, this just isn't going to be how I'm going to allow this to affect me. And I would start to have that internal dialogue. In the very beginning, it was kind of, like I said, undefined what got me up. But as I made it through like the first probably couple weeks, I remember that the strong internal dialogue was a decision that I made where I said, those are things I can't control, so I'm going to pick a handful of things that I can control, and I'm going to just absolutely fucking excel in those areas. And that's when I started, because at that point, the stress and those things that had me barely working out, I was eating bad, I wasn't spending a lot of time with my wife, and so I'd kind of picked these areas and was like, I'm going to be really, really serious about thriving in these areas. And that's really what, I don't know all the details of what got me out of bed, but that's what kept me out of bed. And as I started working out more, I was getting in better shape. And before I knew it, I was in the best shape. My relationship was better, and all these things were thriving. And then I was able to look back at those things, those relationships that fell apart, and see them in a totally different light. Like, those were blessings. Like, those people needed to be out of my life. Like, this is what allowed me to focus on better things. And so that perspective really just ended up changing. But yeah, getting yourself out of bed is, you were either born that way, you ended up acquiring those skills or that grit over time, or there's just going to be that little voice in the back of your head that's just going to say, like, I'm not going to allow this to be my reality. I'm not going to go out like this. And it might be a combination of those things that if it gets you up for that one day, you hope that you make a little bit of progress that day that motivates you for the next day, and it just continues on.
Have you had any correlation between those periods where you don't go to the gym and the sort of picture of your life, and then when you go back to the gym, and how suddenly just things look differently? Like, do you see a difference in yourself if you're, who Larry is when he's not been to the gym for a week, and
yeah,
mentally?
Yeah, I mean, for me, is fitness has changed so much over time, and I think anybody watching this that's had a long history of fitness could probably explain it the same way. Maybe in high school they did it for sports, and then when they got a little older they did it to lose weight, and then maybe they did it a little later because they wanted to do a bodybuilding show, whatever the deal is. So for me though, fitness now has been, I'll start to kind of bicker with my wife a little, and I'm like, wait a minute, and I'll go down to our gym and I'll work out, and I'll text her 30 minutes later like, I'm sorry, everything's good. So it's like, it's my therapy. Like, it keeps me sane and prevents me from killing. So it's like, it's necessary for that. Also is, I just have a personal standard of who I see when I look in the mirror that makes me feel confident. And that can be different for each person. Like, I'm very understanding that I have a bodybuilder body type that most women don't find attractive, most men don't want. So it isn't for anybody else, but it's my standard of what I like to maintain. And so a big thing for me is I feel personally disappointed when I fall under the expectations and standards that I have in my life in any area. So when I go into the gym and I haven't been there, it's a reminder of that disappointment. And it's saying, I don't want to feel like this again tomorrow. So you better finish the workout and you better show up again tomorrow. So I think I'm pretty good about that when I fall off, is my internal dialogue. I always tell people, you have to be your biggest fan and your biggest critic, and it has to be on a micro scale. I feel like people have macro evaluation of those things, is they only are hard on themselves when they have a major failure. They're only really excited when they have major success. But I think balance is being able to do that in the small things. Is if you woke up 10 minutes late, you have to be able to tell yourself that's shit, don't do that. That's not how we hold ourselves. If you show up 10 minutes late somewhere when you're used to showing up 10 minutes early, you have to be able to be a critic and tell yourself that wasn't okay. When I think in those small times, most of us make excuses, and it's not that bad, it's okay, they didn't even notice, it's all right. But that's how you course correct. And the same with small things. In my business, I remember early on, I would put out yard signs that you'd stick in the grass. And I remember we started getting a bunch of phone calls, and I was bad on the phone, so I wasn't getting them to show up. But I was still excited because at least one thing was better. Like, I got calls. That's at least one problem fixed. At least people are calling us now. So I think that you have to be able to celebrate the small wins, and you have to course correct even in the small errors. And if you can do that, then you kind of keep yourself kind of small, bouncing on that line. But if you only allow yourself to celebrate the big wins or the big failures, then you're kind of lobbing back and forth. And I think that's where people struggle a lot.
Larry, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.